Ethan Marlowe stood in the freezing corridor of the county morgue, feeling the weight of a silence that seemed to slow the world around him as the attendant drew back the sheet, revealing a face he believed he would never see again. And yet there she was, or so he thought. The pale, lifeless form that lay before him carried the familiar features of his wife, Lena Marlowe, the woman he had loved, trusted, and held through countless storms of life. And while his chest tightened with unbearable grief, his mind wrestled with the impossibility of what he was seeing, because Lena had gone missing only 3 days ago, disappearing without explanation, vanishing into a void of uncertainty that consumed him with fear and restless searching. And now here he was standing in a steel-lined room, staring at what appeared to be the final answer to his desperate questions, though something inside him resisted the truth as faint doubts clawed at the edges of his thoughts, whispering that something was very wrong, though he could not yet understand the strange emptiness that surrounded this moment, nor the unsettling stillness in his gut. And even as he nodded to confirm the identification, a small unseen thread of unease began to tug at the corners of reality, slowly unraveling the world he thought he knew and pulling him toward a revelation darker and far more twisted than he could ever imagine, a revelation that would begin unraveling only 72 hours later. The days following the identification passed in a haze of sorrow as Ethan retreated into his home, where memories clung to the air like ghosts drifting through the halls, and every corner of the house felt heavy with the absence of Lena. The calm, gentle presence he once relied on had vanished, leaving behind shadows that stretched across his mind and wrapped around his heart. And yet even as he tried to grieve, something kept gnawing its way through his thoughts, demanding to be acknowledged. Strange details that refused to sit right, such as the slight difference in a birthmark, the faint unfamiliar scar near her hairline, the odd stiffness in her hands, all pieces that seemed minor on their own but together created a disquieting blur of uncertainty that stirred the ground beneath his grief. And each time he closed his eyes he saw the morgue, the cold fluorescent lights, the stillness of the body, but something hidden behind that stillness seemed to call him back, urging him to look again, urging him to question the story he had accepted. And though he tried to dismiss the doubts, his instincts sharpened with every slow passing hour, until the world around him felt drenched in secrets pressing in on him from every direction, whispering that the truth was not what it seemed, and that Lena, wherever she truly was, had not left the story yet. On the third night Ethan found himself unable to sleep as a storm of restless questions rattled through his mind, pushing him toward answers he was not ready to face. And it was during this sleepless descent into doubt that his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a simple line that sent a chill slicing through his spine. Look at the airport footage. And those words rippled through his mind like a cold wave, stirring fear and curiosity into a tangled force that drove him to open his laptop and tap into the public arrivals camera feed, where lines of travelers moved steadily through the terminal. And as he studied the footage, his breath hitched, his heart lurched, and an icy tremor ran through his body, because there she was, moving through the bustling crowd with the same unmistakable stride, the same familiar tilt of her head, the same presence he had held in his arms for years. Lena, alive, or someone who looked exactly like her, clutching a passport, boarding gate information glowing above her, and the timestamp showed it clearly. She was boarding a flight to Dubai only hours before he received the message, and the realization shattered the fragile world he had been clinging to, sending him spiraling into a deeper, darker confusion. Ethan replayed the footage over and over, watching the figure move with deliberate confidence, weaving through the terminal without hesitation. And though the camera quality blurred the finer details, he knew with a certainty carved into his bones that this was Lena, or some version of her, one that defied every explanation he had to offer. And as he watched her vanish into the gate tunnel, a heavy dread began to form in the pit of his stomach, a dread that told him he was entangled in something far beyond a disappearance or a mistaken identity, something orchestrated, designed meticulously to pull him into a maze of deception. And the more he thought, the deeper the maze seemed to stretch, twisting around secrets Lena had never spoken, secrets he had never guessed she carried. And while he tried to rationalize the impossible truth, the echo of the morgue room returned to him, the stillness, the coldness, the fact that he had accepted what he was shown, even though his instincts had screamed otherwise. And now, as he sat alone, illuminated only by the glow of the screen, he sensed that the woman he had loved had not simply disappeared. She had fled, or been taken or replaced by forces that moved in silence and shadows. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan packed a small bag and drove to the airport, his pulse thrumming with a mix of terror and fierce resolve. And as he reached the departures hall, every sound, every face, every flicker of light seemed sharpened by the tension tightening inside him, and the terminal felt like a world suspended between reality and nightmare. Echoes of rolling luggage, murmured conversations, distant announcements, all fading into the background as he fixated on the last place he saw her. Alive. And after hours of questioning airline staff, reviewing scraps of available footage and piecing together scattered details, he learned one detail that sent his nerves spiraling. Lena had boarded with a new identity, one freshly issued weeks before her disappearance, one connected to offshore accounts, foreign addresses, and coded transactions that pointed not to a victim but to someone running from a life she had carefully abandoned, and the betrayal stung like a blade twisting in his chest. Though beneath the pain rose a deeper, more chilling fear, because if Lena had crafted and escaped this elaborate, who exactly had he identified in the morgue, and what did Lena need to flee from so desperately that she had left behind a body to take her place? As Ethan dug deeper, the fragments of truth began aligning into a horrifying picture, one that revealed secret meetings, hidden communications, and evidence of Lena working undercover within an international ring known for identity manipulation, extortion, and vanishing those who knew too much. And Ethan discovered that Lena had been living a double life, one part devoted wife, the other part silent operative, trapped within a dangerous network whose reach extended far beyond anything he could imagine. And when she tried to break free, the organization crafted a perfect illusion of her death, ensuring that those hunting her would follow the wrong trail, buying her 72 hours to escape. Yet someone within that network had chosen to lead Ethan toward the truth, guiding him through cryptic messages suggesting he was not meant to be an outsider but a key piece in a conspiracy he had never known he was part of. And with every revelation, the walls around him seemed to close, impressing him toward a final confrontation with the reality he had been shielded from. In the final hours before dawn, Ethan followed the last thread of information to an abandoned warehouse by the river, where shadows clung to the walls like ghosts and quiet footsteps echoed across the concrete. And there, standing at the center of the dimly lit space, was Lena, alive, shaken, and carrying the weight of a truth she had never planned to reveal. And as she stepped closer, her voice trembling, she confessed that the network she infiltrated had discovered her true intentions, marking her for elimination, and the body he identified had been a decoy created by the organization to erase her existence. But something had gone wrong. Another faction inside the network had their own plans for Ethan, believing he held information he did not know he possessed, information Lena had hidden inside their home without ever telling him. And before Ethan could respond, the light snapped off, the room plunged into darkness, and a cold voice echoed through the space, revealing the final twist. Lena was not the one being hunted. Ethan was, and she had returned not to escape but to use him as the final piece in a plan that had been unfolding long before he realized he was part of it. The darkness inside the warehouse settled around Ethan like a living thing, breathing cold air against his skin as he tried to steady himself in the black space where every sound felt amplified and every shadow seemed to shift with hidden intent. And as the echo of that chilling voice faded, the weight of betrayal pressed deeper into his chest, because the realization struck him with devastating clarity. He had never been a spectator in this twisted game, he had been the center of it, the reason for the deception, the target of a pursuit he never knew existed. And while he struggled to understand the threads of this nightmare, a dim, narrow beam of light flickered to life, revealing faint silhouettes moving with silent precision around the edges of the room, their presence carrying an atmosphere of trained coldness, as if they had been waiting for this moment far longer than he could comprehend. And in that trembling glow, Ethan saw Lena, her expression carved with conflict, fear, and something darker that he could not name, as though she had crossed a line she could never return from. And with each step she took toward him, he felt the ground of trust crumble beneath his feet, sinking into a void of uncertainty that threatened to swallow him whole. And though her eyes held a trace of the woman he once loved, they also held secrets sharp enough to cut through every memory, every moment, every fragile belief he had clung to. And as the shadows tightened their circle around him, Ethan understood with growing dread that the answers he had come seeking were far more dangerous than the lies he had been shown, and that the truth waiting in the next breath would determine not only his fate but the final revelation of why this entire deadly illusion had been built around him from the beginning.